I'm sure you've never read a story as chilling and mysterious as this one. The terrifying secret of Union Station that consumed all of Kansas City. Do you believe in places that are truly evil? Then this story will send shivers down your spine, a station that is alive and traps people within its walls. Read the story till the very end, because the final line will haunt you forever. If you enjoyed this tale, make sure to give it a like. Subscribe to British Hauntings so you never miss out on true terrifying stories like this one.
Comment below, I could spend a night at Union Station.
Let's begin the story. Everyone told Jake not to take the night shift at Union Station. The old place gets weird after midnight. The day guard had warned, chuckling like it was a joke. But Jake needed the extra pay, so he laughed it off until his first night alone. The grand halls, usually buzzing with tourists, were tomb silent. His footsteps echoed like someone was following just out of sight. Then came the whispers, hisses of words he couldn't quite catch, slithering from the arched ceilings. He told himself it was the wind until the shadows started moving. Near the Harvey House dining area, the air turned icy. A figure flickered in the corner of his eye, a woman in a 1920s flapper dress, her face gaunt, lips mouthing silent pleas. When he spun to face her, she vanished. His radio crackled to life with static, then a child's giggle. The worst part, the basement. The old tunnels beneath the station were sealed decades ago, but that night the door was open. A damp, earthy stench oozed out. Something scraped down their long nails on brick, and a voice, guttural and hungry, whispered, "You're late." Jake ran. He didn't stop until he hit the parking lot. The next morning, they found his flashlight still on, rolling in slow circles near the basement door as if someone had been playing with it. Jake never went back to Union Station after that night, but the station wasn't done with him. 3 days later, his phone buzzed at 3:17 a.m., a voicemail from an unknown number. No voice, just the distant of a steam engine and a slow, wet breathing. Then, a whisper, "You forgot your keys." He checked his pocket. His work keys were gone. Maria Lopez needed the job, single mom, rent due. When security hired her, they didn't mention why. The last guy quit. Her first night was quiet until the tapping started. Rhythmic, deliberate, like a conductor checking tickets, but the grand hall was empty. Then, near the old ticket booth, she saw them. Shoes, polished wingtips, pacing behind the counter. No legs, no body, just shoes, clicking against marble. The air smelled suddenly of coal, smoke, and something metallic, blood. The massive departure board flickered. Every train listing changed. Two final Local historians whisper about the worst day in Union Station's past, the 1933 Kansas City massacre. Gangsters, FBI agents, and innocent bystanders gunned down in a hail of bullets. But older rumors speak of something worse, a night train that arrived in 1923 carrying no passengers, just coffins. Workers who vanished during its unloading. Whispers of a secret track, Track 13, buried beneath the station. A track that only appears when something or someone wants to leave. Maria didn't believe in ghosts until she heard the whistle, not from above, but below her feet. Jake got the call at dawn. Maria had disappeared. They found her radio near the basement door, still on, a voice inside it whispering. And if you stand in Union Station's grand hall at midnight, you might hear it too. The distant scream of a train whistle from underneath the floor. Coming soon, the Savoy Hotel's room 505, where guests check in but never check out. They never found Maria Lopez. The police report called it a voluntary disappearance. But the night cleaners at Union Station knew better. They'd seen the stains, dark, rust-colored streaks, leading down to the basement door, as if something heavy had been dragged, and the whispers in the grand hall had grown louder. Ethan Cole was a skeptic, a true crime podcaster from Chicago. He came to Kansas City to debunk the Union Station legends. He set up cameras, EVP recorders, and a live stream. Ghosts aren't real, he told his audience, but fear, that's the real haunting. His first night was uneventful. Then at 2:34 a.m., his thermal camera caught a figure standing near track 12. A man in a long overcoat, face shadowed by a fedora. The temperature dropped 20 degrees in seconds. Ethan's voice shook as he addressed the figure. "If you're trying to scare me, it's not working." The man lifted his head. Where his face should have been was a void, a swirling black mist. The feed cut out. When Ethan's crew found him, he was crouched in a corner of the basement, muttering the same phrase over and over. "They're waiting for the train." Old blueprints showed a sealed-off tunnel beneath track 12. Track 13 officially condemned in 1924, but when maintenance crews went to inspect it, the door was already open. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of wet earth and old blood. The walls were covered in names, some carved, some written in what looked like charcoal. One stood out, fresh and glistening, and beneath it a single word, scrawled in jagged letters. Ethan's podcast aired one final episode, a garbled audio file recorded deep in the tunnels. "Never answer a whisper. Never go near the basement door. And if you hear a train, whistle run." Want more? The Belvoir Winery Inn has a room where the dead still dance, but that's a story for another night. The basement door was welded shut after Ethan disappeared. Union Station management called it renovations. The night staff knew better, but some doors don't stay closed. Lena Carter wasn't supposed to work nights. She was just a part-time tour guide, a UMKC history student, paying her rent. But when the station manager begged her to cover one evening shift, she agreed. At 1:17 a.m., the power flickered. The Grand Hall's iconic clock stopped its hands, frozen at 3:33, the exact time of the 1933 massacre. Then the PA system crackled to life, with a sound that made Lena's blood turn to ice. A voice she recognized. Maria Lopez's voice. The station was empty, but as Lena ran toward the exit, the platforms began to fill. Men in Prohibition-era suits, their faces half-rotted. Women in blood-stained flapper dresses, eyes hollow. A little boy clutching a teddy bear with no hands. And at the center of them all, a towering figure in a conductor's uniform. His face stretched too wide, his teeth like rusted railroad spikes. Lena looked down. A yellowed ticket had appeared in her hand. Kansas City's darkest secret wasn't the massacre. It was what happened before. In 1923, a private train arrived under cover of night. No records, no witnesses at least, none who lived. Rumor said it carried undesirables for a wealthy occultist's experiment. But when the cars were opened, they were empty, except for the scratches inside. Now, every few decades, the train returns, and it needs new passengers. No more next day. Lena's phone was found on track 12, still recording. The video shows her backing away as the ghostly crowd advances. Then a deafening train whistle. The camera shakes. The klur, a blur of skeletal hands. The camera shakes. A blur of skeletal hands. A scream cut short. An antique locomotive, its windows glowing hellish red. The conductor tipping his hat as it plunges into the wall and vanishes. Temporarily seen, calm and brying life. Union Station's night tours are temporarily suspended, but sometimes after midnight, the ticket booth lights up on its own. The station's archives held the answer. Buried in a 1923 police report was a faded photo of a luxury private car, the Midnight Club, owned by a reclusive Casey industrial. The manifest listed 12 passengers. None were ever seen again. But the real horror was in the margins, a handwritten note. That night, Boone dreamed of a train. Not the ghostly one from Lena's video. This was older, grander. Its windows glowed with unnatural light. Inside, shadowy figures danced, and at the rear, a thin man in a velvet suit counting bones on an abacus. The next morning, Boone found a ticket on his windshield. Unlike the others, this one was fresh, the ink still wet. That's when he understood. The ghost train wasn't just collecting passengers. At 3:33 a.m., Boone stood on track 12, ticket in hand. The air turned thick with the scent of bourbon and blood. A piano played somewhere in the darkness. The last thing the security cameras captured was Boone stepping forward as a train that wasn't there swallowed him whole. They never found Boone. But sometimes, late-night commuters report a strange sight. A lone detective's badge lying on the tracks, polished to a mirror shine. Pick it up, and you'll hear it. The distant sound of a jazz band playing a funeral dirge. Kansas City's abandoned subway tunnels, where something still rides the rail. The disappearances stopped after Detective Boone vanished. The yellowed tickets quit appearing. Union Station's night shift breathed easier. Maintenance workers began reporting at first, a high metallic shriek echoing through the station's bones every night at 3:33 a.m. Not from the track, not from the tunnels. Security footage showed the source, steam leaking from vents that hadn't functioned in decades. And in that steam, shapes, elongated figures pressing against the metal grates like prisoners testing iron bars. Then came the words scratched into the station's limestone overnight. The truth was buried in a rotting ledger from 1923. 12 prominent Kansas City elites, bankers, politicians, a famous jazz singer, had boarded a private train for an experimental journey. But the ledger's last page listed a 13th name in hurried script, Elias Voss. Conductor Voss wasn't supposed to be on board. He was the sacrifice. The ritual was simple. 12 souls for eternal prosperity. The city would thrive, and the passengers would live forever as spectral kings of Kansas City's underworld. But when the train plunged, inside Detective Boone sat at a dining table, his mouth sewn shut with piano wire. Across from him, Lena Carter slowly turned her head a full 180 degrees and smiled. "Room for one more," she whispered. Then the hands came, dozens of them, bursting from the train's windows, grabbing Hector's overalls. At dawn, workers found Hector's keys and a single train ticket on the platform. Since that night, the whispers have stopped. The basement door stays locked. The clock ticks normally. But if you stand on track 12 at 3:33 a.m. and press your ear to the wall, you'll hear it, the distant of an engine fading away. 3 days after Hector's disappearance, Kansas City's oldest bank vault opened on its own. Inside, 12 skeletons in 1920s finery, their skulls split open like overripe fruit. And on the wall above them, written in fresh blood, for 5 years, Union Station stood quiet. No whispers in the grand hall, no phantom trains in the night. The curse, it seemed, was broken. The anniversary came. October 31st, 3:33 a.m. The station was empty, or should have been. Security guard Danny Ruiz froze when the departure board flickered to life, the air filled with the scent of burning coal, and something sweeter underneath, perfume, the kind flappers wore. Then from the speakers, a voice Danny recognized from old newsreels, the missing jazz singer from 1923, singing "Ain't We Got Fun" in perfect staticky pitch, her last known words before boarding the train. The vault skeletons were gone. In their place, 12 fresh tickets pinned to the wall with rusted railroad spike, and 6 others, recent missing persons, the police had never connected to the station. At the bottom of the pile, a 13th ticket pulsed like a living thing. Danny ran. He didn't stop until he hit the parking lot, where a vintage cab idled its door open. The driver tipped his hat, no face beneath the brim, and gestured to the meter. Because the curse was never about the train. It was about the station. Union Station isn't a building, it's a mouth. And after a century of feeding, it's learned to set its own trap. Invitations back to the belly, the ghost just seasoning, and the countdown. You're reading this, aren't you? The countdown reached 0. Danny Ruiz never heard the whistle, not with his ears. He felt it vibrating in his teeth, in the marrow of his bones, as the world around Union Station warped. The grand hall stretched unnaturally, ceilings dripping with black oil, the floorboards splitting to... The conductor stepped forward, his face finally visible, a shifting mass of train schedules and screaming mouths. "Balance must be kept," he hissed. Danny understood now. The station didn't want him. In 1923, the elites didn't just sacrifice 12 souls. Every disappearance, every tragedy, every whispered horror in the city's history, fuel for the station's insatiable hunger. The train was never the curse, it was the delivery system. And now, with the last ticket claimed, the cycle was complete. Danny's hands moved without his consent, pulling the 13th ticket from his pocket. The ink rearranged itself before his eyes. The ghosts seized him, not with malice, but with relief. Their fingers passed through his flesh like smoke, stitching his screams into the station's walls as the grand clock's hands snapped backward. Outside, across the city, lights winked out, streets emptied, the skyline twitched, buildings folding in on themselves like a child's discarded sketch. And from the Missouri River, a sound echoed, not a whistle, but a gulp. At dawn, the cleanup crew found Union Station spotless. No tickets, no ghosts, no guards, just a single outdated departure board still flickering. And if you stand very still in the grand hall at 3:33 a.m., you might hear it, the faintest echo of a jazz band, playing in a place that no longer exists. Or maybe that's just the wind. After all, Kansas City always had a way of blending music with